Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Srimvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Sharana Kirtana Devyanta Stohi Avadrani Vidhanoti Sariswatam Nashta Prayeshu Vadveshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloki Bhakti Bhakti Nashtiki. Krishna, today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 8, verse 23. Nanyam tata padma palashaloshanad dukha chiddham te mrikayami kanchana yo mrikriyate hasta grihita padmaya shreyatare anga vimugyamanaya. Translation. My dear Dhruva, as far as I am concerned, I do not find anyone who can mitigate your distress but the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose eyes are like lotus petals. Many demigods, such as Lord Brahma, seek the pleasure of the goddess of fortune, but the goddess of fortune herself, with the lotus flower in hand, is always ready to render service to the Supreme Lord. Purport by Srivan Yeshua Prabhupada. Suniti pointed here with that the benediction received from the Supreme Personality of Godhead and that received from the demigods are not on an equal level. Foolish persons say that no matter whom one worships, one will get the same result. But actually, that is not a fact. In Bhagavad Gita, it is also said that benedictions received from the demigods are all temporary and are meant for the less intelligent. In other words, because the demigods are all materialistically conditioned souls, although they are situated in very exalted positions, their benedictions cannot be permanent. Permanent benediction is spiritual benediction. Since the spirit soul is eternal, it is also said in Bhagavad Gita that only people who have lost their intelligence to worship the demigods go to worship the demigods. Therefore, Suniti told her son that he should not seek the mercy of the demigods, but should directly approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead to mitigate his misery. Material opulences are controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead through his different potencies and specifically the goddess of fortune. Therefore, those who are after material opulences seek the pleasure or mercy of the goddess of fortune. Even the highly placed demigods worship the goddess of fortune, but the goddess of fortune, Mahalakshmi herself, is always seeking the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone, therefore, who takes to worship the Supreme Lord automatically receives the blessings of the goddess of fortune. At this stage of his life, Dhruva Maharaj, who was seeking material opulences, and his mother advised rightly that even for material opulences, it is better to worship not the demigods, but the Supreme Lord. Although a pure devotee does not seek benedictions from the Supreme Lord for material advancement, it is stated in Bhagavad Gita that pious persons go to the Lord even for material benedictions. A person who goes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead for material gain is gradually purified in association with the Supreme Lord. Thus, he becomes free from all material desires and is elevated to the platform of spiritual life. Unless one is raised to the spiritual platform, it is not possible for him to completely transcend all material contamination. Suniti, the mother of Dhruva, was a far-seeing woman, and therefore she advised her son to worship the Supreme Lord and no one else. The Lord is described herein as lotus-eyed, Padma Palasha Lochanat. When a person is fatigued, if he sees a lotus flower, all his fatigue can immediately be reduced to nil. Similarly, when an aggrieved person sees the lotus face of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, immediately all his grief is reduced. A lotus flower is also an insignia in the hand of Lord Vishnu as well as in the hand of the goddess of fortune. The worshippers of the goddess of fortune and Lord Vishnu together are certainly very opulent in all respects, even in material life. The Lord is sometimes described as Shiva Virinchinutam, which means that Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma also offer their respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayan. Namo Vishnupadaya, Krishna Prestaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine, Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshkarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktarani. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I would like to seek blessings from all the assembled Vaishnavas here, and thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to purify myself, and please forgive me for any shortcomings that may come. So, before talking about the teachings in this verse, uh, right now in the Leela, Dhruva Maharaj is distressed and crying, and he's seeking comfort from his mother, Suniti, who is really in pain after hearing about the harsh words that Suruchi has said to her son. And uh, even though she's struggling with her emotions, she's advising Dhruva to not harbor any ill feelings towards others, and she's acknowledging the truth in Suruchi's words. And she also explained that their lowly status in the king's eyes is why Dhruva is treated so poorly. And to rise above this, Suniti is urging Dhruva to give up envy and wholeheartedly worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so in this verse, she is finishing the process of directing Dhruva to worship the Lord. And so right now we are living in the material world, and every aspect of this world is being managed and maintained by different intelligent people, and at least materially. And that is our experience here. And if you go into some large department store, uh, it's not like everything is going on automatically. There's a managing director, and he has different department managers, and all the department managers have a group of workers that they supervise. And in this way, all the activities of the store are being managed. So this example is given to explain how Krishna is managing the universe in a similar way. So Krishna also appoints a managing director who we can say is Lord Brahma, and he has different departmental managers who are responsible for many different tasks in the material world. And these managers are called the devatas. So many materialistic people become attached to worshipping these devatas to get some temporary or materialistic benefits. And Krishna discusses this devata worship in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse 20. Those whose minds are distorted by material desires surrendered unto devatas to follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own nature. So it's said that less intelligent people who have lost their spiritual sense to take shelter of demigods or uh, instead want immediate fulfillment of material desires. And generally, such people do not go to the Supreme Personality of Godhead or Krishna because they are in the modes of ignorance or passion, and therefore worship various demigods. And they are only motivated by small desires and do not have a supreme goal, or they do not know how to reach one. And in Vedic literature, there are different recommendations for worshiping different gods for different purposes. For different purposes. For example, a diseased man is recommended to worship Suryadev or the sun. And those who are not devotees of the Lord think that for certain purposes, demigods are even better than the Supreme Lord. But a pure devotee knows that Krishna is the master of all. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it said that only the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the master and all others are servants. Therefore, a pure devotee never goes to demigods for satisfaction for his material needs. He depends on the Supreme Lord. And the pure devotee is always satisfied with whatever he gives. And in the next verse in Bhagavad Gita 7.21, Krishna says, I am in everyone's heart as a super soul. As soon as one desires to worship the demigods, I make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to some particular deity. So God has given independence to everyone. So therefore, if one desires to have material enjoyment and he really sincerely wants to have such facilities from the demigods who facilitate material things, the Supreme Lord, as a super soul in everyone's heart, understands and gives such facilities to such people. And as the Supreme Father of all living entities, he doesn't interfere with their independence, but he does give all the facilities so that they can fulfill their material desires. And some may ask why the all-powerful Krishna would give such facilities to living entities for enjoying, uh, because that lets them fall into the trap of the illusory energy. And the answer that's given is that if Krishna as the super soul doesn't give such facilities, then there's no meaning to independence. So that's why he gives everyone full independence, what everyone likes. But uh, his ultimate plan and his ultimate instruction that we find in the Bhagavad Gita is that man should give up all other engagements and fully surrender unto him, and that will make man happy. So we see that not only the living entities, but also the demigods are subordinate to the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the living entity cannot worship the demigod by his own desire, and nor can the demigod even uh, give a living entity any benediction without supreme will. And as it is said, not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And generally, people who are distressed in the material world go to the demigods, since that's what, as we went over, is advised in some Vedic literatures. Um, and a person who wants some particular thing may worship such a demigod. And even though both the demigod and the living entity are independent, they're still dependent on the supreme will. So uh, they're not completely independent. And in the third verse, Bhagavad Gita 7.22, Krishna says, endowed with such a faith, he seeks favors of a particular demigod and obtains his desires. But in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. So the demigods cannot award uh, benedictions to the devotees without the permission of the Supreme Lord. And the living entity also may forget that everything is the property of the Supreme Lord, but the demigods do not forget. So the worship of demigods and the achievement of desired results are not due to the demigods, and we should understand that they're due to Krishna himself by arrangement. And the pure devotee, when in need of something, will only pray to the Supreme Lord. Um, and even though this is true, a pure devotee will not ask for material benefit. And a living entity goes to the demigods, usually because he is mad to fulfill his lust. This is another thing that is said. This happens when something that's not completely beneficial is desired by the living entity, and the Lord himself does not fulfill the desire. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it said that one who worships the Supreme Lord and at the same time desires both material enjoyment is contradictory in his desires. So devotional service of the Supreme Lord and the worship of a demigod can't be in the same platform because the worship of a demigod is material and devotional service to the Supreme Lord is completely spiritual. So for people who are desiring to return to Godhead, all these material desires are impediments. A pure devotee of the Lord is not awarded the material benefits desired by less intelligent living entities who prefer to worship demigods of the material world rather than engage in devotional service of the Supreme Lord. So in the next verse, uh, following the ones that I mentioned, 7.23, Krishna says, men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet. So here, another effect of worshipping demigods is shown, and it's stated that worshippers of demigods go to different planetary systems where various demigods are situated. Just as a worshiper of the sun achieves the sun, or a worshiper of Chandradev receives the moon. So similarly, If anyone wants to worship a demigod like Indra, he could attain that particular demigod's planet. But it's it's not like anyone, regardless of whatever demigod is worshipped, will reach the supreme personality of Godhead. So that's denied in this verse. It's clearly stated that the worshippers of demigods go to different planets, but the devotee of the Supreme Lord goes directly to him. And if one knows that both the demigods and himself are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, his knowledge is perfect. But if he does not understand this, he achieves different planets where the demigods reside. And this is not the same destination that the devotee reaches. And the results achieved by the demigods' benedictions are perishable because within this material world, the planets, the demigods, and their worshippers are all perishable. They're all temporary. Therefore, it is clearly stated in this verse that all results achieved by worshipping uh, the demigods as well are also temporary and perishable. So seeing all this, we can understand that such worship is performed by the less intelligent living entity. So in this verse, we're seeing that this is part of what uh, Mother Suniti is explaining to Dhruva Maharaj. And she's explaining that even the demigods offer their obeisances to the Supreme Lord. So we should also understand this and know that um, when even the demigods, who are sometimes referred to as more intelligent people, are offering their obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we should also do the same instead of directing our devotion elsewhere. And just to go over the different points discussed in this verse. The first is endurance through devotion. So Suniti is advising Dhruva to overcome his troubles and adversity by focusing on worshiping Supreme Personality of Godhead or Narayana. And she is highlighting the importance of devotion as a path to rise above material challenges and achieve a spiritual success. And second is the limited power of demigods. So the text explains that demigods can grant material desires, but these are temporary and ultimately controlled by the Supreme Lord. So worshiping demigods is seen as less intelligent because it doesn't lead to eternal fulfillment. And third is the supreme authority of Krishna. So Krishna is portrayed as the ultimate controller, even over the demigods. So true devotees seek Krishna's favor, understanding that he is the source of all blessings and also the key to eternal happiness. And fourth is material versus spiritual goals. So worshiping demigods for material gains um, is contrasted with seeking the spiritual elevation, which comes through devotion to Krishna. And the former leads to temporary results, while devotion to Krishna offers eternal rewards. And lastly, independence and choice. So we see that Krishna does actually give independence to the living entities, and he allows them to pursue material desires as they choose because he respects the free will. However, the ultimate guidance is to surrender unto him for true happiness and liberation. And we see that Krishna himself gives this instruction uh, in the Bhagavad Gita and through many different avatars and leelas. So that is what is recommended that we should follow. So that's all I have for today's verse. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, and please.